Hey, this is Mike. Welcome to Atomics on a Friday. Thank you for checking out this demo. If you would like, subscribe and like to get more content in the future. Enjoy. There's lots of options, but this is great. I'm just ready for the demo. So
we're gonna do it live.
Yeah, let's do it live.
Do it live.
You want me to run mine first? You want to run yours first?
You can run yours first.
I don't know if mine. I think mine.
If you're not up, I can take it.
Do it.
It's all good. Can we do it? All right.
Shred it.
They don't call me Master Shredder for nothing.
I'm already in it. No, I'll wait for
you.
Go ahead.
I don't know how to share screen quick enough. Stop sharing. Present. Share.
I should probably clean up my environment because I think I already ran it.
Okay, so can you see this? Is my VM box?
Here, let me drop it again. It is, but it's fine.
Okay.
It doesn't bug anybody.
Gotcha. So first thing we're going to do is we're going to use invoke atomic red team, which is the executor framework using PowerShell to invoke the actual atomics themselves. Then we're going to actually do, again, which we touched on earlier, which is how do we go from single endpoint to testing this across multiple endpoints and doing our validation on that front. So in this case, I've already kind of set that up. So I've imported the module. I've created the variable to store the PS session, which is going to be run across 4 endpoints. But then we can kind of step into some of these tests. So the first one, which we alluded to, which was the scheduled task. So in this case, we have the it comes with an argument that you can actually change. So you can manually. So if you were going to script this out, kind of like what we have presented and we have in our gist, is the ability to modify the configurable arguments. So in this case, what time you want it to execute at. So right now it's 2:34 my time now, so this time doesn't work. But I could then change it out so that way I can see, can I see the execution after the scheduled task created, similar to how they're doing it. And then I just pass it through. Test GUIDs are probably the best way to associate and make sure you're doing. You can, of course, use things like test name, test number. But let's do this. Let's just kind of rip one as an example. Copy paste works great.
I was going to say you might want to get that last G. Yeah. And this is sort of like the simple method of atomic red team, right? Like being able to just copy paste, ship a test downrange and see what happens.
Exactly.
Love it.
And there it is. And then we could go, and then again, we'd want to think about, okay, what is the expected outcome? What things do I think should have recorded it? Being that it's on this single instance, looking at things like Windows event logs, EDR data, any kind of interesting thing that would help me validate or detect suspicious activity for a scheduled task creation. Scheduled tasks, generally, those are difficult as there could be things like simple Google updates. So trying to find every single instance of a new scheduled task creation might be a little bit noisy, but definitely there are some ideas for fidelity detection.
But how often are you seeing /XML and an XML file being passed across a fleet?
Exactly.
You know,
good question.
That's what I would hunt for.
For sure. There's a lot of different things, and it all comes down to the context, right? Like if you want to go through and, step by step try and mimic or emulate this exact report, then absolutely you want to do that and you can key off of it. But if we think about writing the analytics from a broad standpoint, so we're not just saying, cool, I have detection for this particular threat, because if you do it just keyed off of those specific things, then you potentially run into gaps, right? Or you've too focused the detection to that particular thing versus potentially having coverage for more than just that single threat.
When you threat hunt, Paul, how are you approaching like scheduled tasks? Are you taking like this high level and then you start drilling into like the /XML? Like how do you start if you're like, I'm going after this DFIR report? Where do you begin on your scheduled task?
Yeah, I think that's interesting. It depends on the data available, right? If I have only a single data source, I'm tied specifically to that. But again, if we think about what actually happens when we execute that particular thing, so in the case of scheduled tasks, like what happens downrange once it's executed, right? There's an XML file written to a specific path. There's some other things that are registered that enable that scheduled task. So by thinking about it that way, I can start to key off, right? I generally start wide, cast my net, see what's kind of there, and then start to drill in. If it's a few hundred endpoints, it's one thing, but if it's a few 100,000 endpoints, right? Trying to key off of specific things that may be interesting in the case of command line parameters, or think about different ways you could execute a scheduled task or create a scheduled task, which is right, kind of like creating different ways of creating services or creating different run keys. So it really depends on the context, but I like to start broad, kind of figure out where how noisy or fidelity is at, and then drill down. But then what are my different data sources? Can I use Windows event logs? Can I use EDR? Are there other things, potentially if it's network based? Am I looking for like remote scheduled task creation? There's different data sources from the network standpoint that we could use.
Yep. And I think like finding the source of those things is definitely coming to sort of like understanding what data you have and making sure that it's being collected when you run these tests. I was just thinking about like scheduled tasks, the actual task log that's generated. Like if folks aren't collecting it, you don't really know you don't know about that source, but it's there, it's on every endpoint. Whereas like if you rely only on your EDR and that endpoint today is shipping it, but say the EDR filters out, X amount of tasks being scheduled daily or something, you might miss it or whatever, or that's the only source you have and that's the only thing you're relying on to look for and validate scheduled tasks. Like, yeah, anyway.
Yeah, no, it's a super interesting point, and especially thinking about it, is it focused on a single organization or even places like MDRs or MSSPs who may have multiple, thinking about it in how you manage it across that board. But if it's a single organization, you generally have the ability to do some baselining and really understanding of potentially where that data is at and what you have. And then, this is a perfect way to validate, like, we have no visibility in this thing. And like, so that's where you can then start to say, okay, and start to work on a project to prioritize like what you need to effectively detect it, right? If it's only a single thing, and then all of a sudden that data source dies one day, like, can you detect that data source going away, or can you get some additional coverage from something else in case that does happen? But
Yep. Cool.
So let's do this one. But in this case, what we're going to do is we're actually going to pass the session flag. And if you remember, we created the PowerShell remote session. In this case, we're going to modify it. So we're going to download an innocuous DLL from the Atomic Red Team repo. If you remember from the DFIR report, they downloaded it from an IP address, and it was an executable, which was masquerading as DLL host, which was actually fast reverse proxy. But in this case, we're going to specify, if we had something internal, we could put in something completely different and tell it the, where we want it to get dropped with what name. So in this case, we're going to download it from Atomic Red Team repo. We're going to call it atomic.dll, but we're also going to have it execute on all of the endpoints associated with the remote session. So in this case, if you can see this, we have 4 endpoints that are associated within that session that I created earlier. And of course, I don't know how to copy and paste. Let's try it one more time.
Just as a quick one, I posted the GIS in the chat as well. So, yeah.
Ooh, look at that. A nice error. Demos are great with this one. Exception calling start with 0 argument. Access is denied. Okay, that's fine. What if we just take out the input args, since I think it might be angry with the spacing potentially? No idea. Perfect. I'd expect nothing less during a demo of it not working. But what we can do is just take it out and go execute it in this manner. Actually, let's do it with our input arg, so we'll just kill the session. But that's as easy it is create the remote session to the endpoints, and then just pass it as a variable inside but we can actually just test it here. In this case, maybe we'll get it locally. And what we should see is in C.
Oh, is that your holiday
There's our
bonus?
atomic DLL. Yeah, that was actually some custom malware I created last week. I social engineered myself on that one.
Yeah.
Wound up getting some beacons.
Nice. That is great.
You can see, so there's kind of a validation, right? We didn't see the execution. They didn't call execution in our example. So that's kind of where we're going to stop, right? In this case, because it's PowerShell, so if we have PowerShell logging, we should get that. If we have PowerShell transcripts, we'll get that information. We have EDR, so potentially seeing it being passed through. But then, of course, files being written to disk and then execution. So, and then, of course, network telemetry, the request out to GitHub, pulling that data down. So there's a lot of different points in which we could then go focus and validate what did we see, was it prevented, was it detected, etc. But I'm trying to forget. I don't think, do you want to step through all of them?
You want to just run them?
Why not? Just run them. All right.
Ship it.
Let's see. Can I copy and paste? Let's see.
Yeah, you all kind of get the gist of it. Yeah, between adding the account. The DFIR report does talk about what the XML looks like, which again is very simple as an adversary. You would just literally export it from like task scheduler, and you can import it across multiple endpoints. And within their XML was just running a bat file from the C Windows directory, which obviously stands out as true sketchiness. They do go and the adversary does attempt to go to like disable monitoring using set MP preference, which is in the full script that Paul just shipped there. Yeah. Starting terminal services. And then kind of the next two things here that DFIR report showcases is the disabling. So yeah, you're at disabled defender there. Is enabling WDigest authentication, which enforces storage of credentials in plain text, but then also disabling LSA protection, which is what was something we didn't have in Atomic Red Team. And then before we get into that, the last thing that they had performed was the comm services mini dump. And I think that will be probably your last one. Oh, you're on MP Pref. Okay.
That one worked great, as we saw. Yeah. I did get the session to work on another test if we saw it earlier.
Yes.
I don't know why that one's angry. I think because it's already set.
Yeah. I know. I feel bad. My live demo is going to be all errors with that it's already ran. Thanks.
If we can also add the verbose flag, which will spit out some more information about it. But we can see here, because we passed it 4 times, we'll see 4 kind of the same execution pattern. But
yeah.
So we'll kind of scroll down. I don't know how to copy paste. Okay, so this one just simply adds the firewall rule to allow RDP access in. In this case, again, here's kind of a perfect example of where we're going to take 2 or more atomics, smash them together to get the desired outcome without necessarily needing to have a single atomic do all the things. While it could do that, in actuality, we don't actually necessarily need to, because we can break it down into smaller pieces and then focus on detection capabilities on those specific pieces versus trying to detect the whole thing when we could focus our efforts on a more targeted approach. Not to say that one is right, but if we split them apart, we have a better chance of potentially not missing something versus trying to make it too big or too broad.
Yep.
But in this case, it's going to use the comm services mini dump function to dump LSAS. And then the last piece of this is, you can see, this is simply going to use the compress archive, take an input file, in this case, which is in our last one. This atomic, this is where it stores the file. So we're taking some of those pieces of the other components and then passing them as the input args here. And then the out file, which is here. So the only difference being is that from, these two are, almost identical to what we saw in the report. The only thing that's really changed here is where we're storing those files. But everything else is one for one.
Yep.
So now if we...
The only thing you're missing is exfiltration to example.com.
We could do that. Maybe we could just use our web shell that you have and upload the zip file.
yeah, that'll be good.
the sweet zip file. But in this case, we can also then go prove that and go look at local.
Now I'm curious what this malware is that you created with your bonus.
And there it is.
When you're done later. That's
so there's the two. Back to downloads. Here, I'll show you my sweet malware. Quick pivot.
Yep. This should be part
I'm
of
trying to remember what I did in this one. I don't remember what I did. Skip sign in for now. Oh, it's going to be angry because
You've already pwned yourself.
Well,
the
I'm
bonus
not
has
logged
already
in,
been exported.
Yeah, start my free trial. Okay. All right. Hold on. No, I don't want to pay you anymore, Microsoft.
Okay.
Right, let's
unpivot.
Unzip. Extract here. It's being used. All right. Well, we can pivot back later.
Yeah, that's fine. You can show us all those things later.
All right.
Another demo failed.
Demo gods are unpleased with me today. That's fine.
Yes, I know. All right, I'll ship over here. I will run that. Okay, so yeah, so same thing. What we're gonna do is just run this, but just on a single endpoint. So it's all the same test. I'm just removing all of the remoting, which is the right here, multi-endpoint PS session. And I think I put this on my desktop because that's where all things belong.
Is it final v2 final with the naming convention?
What do you mean?
For version control, you don't have like 17 files that start with final and end with final, or
nope.
A final v4 final.
no. But yeah, so same thing, just kicked off. I unfortunately ran this, I think, yesterday or something. So it's probably like, I've already done this and I don't have any AV on here. So of course it's freaking out over like, there is no AV because you can't do this. And then the last one, it's compressing, which is super cool. That
so I didn't,
I think it's
if you go back to your PowerShell, I'm really curious how it updated 16 firewall rules when the actual atomic modifies 1.
Yeah.
It says updated 6, updated 16, but the command only executes 1. So this is a perfect example of, inputs versus outputs and expectancies, right?
Yep.
We expect this thing to execute and this expected outcome. And when those two aren't what they should be, we should definitely dig into that. So add that to our, what should we do?
Yeah, I mean, this goes back to even just understanding what the test is, right? And making sure you're running things, you even understand what you're doing so that you know what you're shipping here. Do you know which test number? It's GUID, right? Is it GUID?
Yeah, it's GUID.
It's GUID.
Test GUID.
Yeah, test GUID. It's this guy. Just do the whole thing. Wrong one. Copy pasta. Woo. Oh. Cancel. Ship. You don't have paste in here.
Oh no.
Oh my gosh. This is fun. Boy. All right, here we go. One more time, people. Copy.
This is great. The beginning of the whole stream looked good with our new logo, and then the production quality went straight downhill as expected.
Exactly. So this is literally just running 2 netsh commands, creating a group, enabling, and then another group for file and print sharing and enabling.
Okay, so that makes sense for 6 because there are technically 3 of the profiles, which is private, public, domain. Yep. So I don't know how 16 came into play, but that's where the 6 comes from, which makes it kind of interesting.
Yep. And these are inbound.
They should be, yes. It should be term serve. Windows remoting, something like that. Windows remote desktop. I forget the exact. Yeah. It's around there.
Wait, isn't it the group name?
Yeah.
Remote desktop.
Banned out. Yep.
Okay.
Boom.
There's a bunch of stuff here.
Oh yeah, which I guess additionally makes sense, right? TCP, UDP rules on top of your profiles, so public, private domain, etc.
And the other one is file and print sharing group. So
that'll be your SMB. All of the SMBs.
Yeah.
Just go disable inbound SMB to all of your workstations, and you will have great success mitigating some lateral movement techniques.
Yeah, that's amazing. Okay.
But yeah, so just kind of a quick and dirty way of taking a report, kind of just going through and stepping through, like, what can we do? And it kind of gives you the starting point. Then you can do some, again, really fancy things like going from single to multi-endpoint. Then when you think about, okay, I have a golden image and all of my endpoints are based off this image, we all know that they are all not, you have 10 of them. All 10 are probably not configured remotely the same. So it gives you a good point to validate based on, because marketing probably has some different OUs or policies or tools set up differently than accounting, et cetera. But at the end of the day, is the pipeline still the same, right? Like, are we still getting the telemetry? Is it generating the same type of telemetry? Are we able to have the detections effectively the same? Why or why not, right? And kind of digging into that. So that's kind of like the starting point of just, hey, I want to rip a bunch of atomic tests. Like, cool, we made some noise, but let's get a little bit more target with it. And it kind of helps us to just figure out like where we're at from a detection capability standpoint. There's a lot of great resources from like the Purple Team emulation framework from the Scythe, which has like a great framework to follow of how you could potentially go about like doing more standardized, I don't want to say sophisticated, not the right word, like repeatable like framework to actually do it in a cohesive and consistent manner. But this kind of just gets the ball rolling of, I start at ground zero and I kind of want to start my baby steps and kind of just get the ball rolling. This is kind of like how I think about like, if I wanted to go emulate this, how would I do it?
Yep. Start with your single endpoint testing and then span that out to your multi-endpoint infrastructure that you have for testing. And yeah.
And then you could do crazy things and create different remote sessions for different endpoint groups, chain your atomics together, and then basically just rip it from A to Z and then have it pivot from one endpoint to the next, to the next, to the next. So you have some interesting ideas from there when you kind of get to that phase of where you're at to where you want to go.
Yeah, that's awesome. Sweet.
What's next? I don't remember. Yeah.